fists together. I am somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
Red and yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight. Everybody is somebody. Stop the violence. Save the children. Stop bullying. Save the children.
Hold your head high. Stick your chest out. You can make it. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sonia Whitaker, National Education Policy Director for Push for Excellence. And we want to thank you for joining us today on the Saturday Morning Forum. We also want to thank Word Network for bringing you to us and us to you. And yet we recognize that many of you are watching us live from our Facebook page right now. If you're doing so, we want you to not only like our page, but we want you to share our page with others right now. And for those of you that are watching us on YouTube Live, we want to ask that you subscribe to our page so that you can gain immediate information about all that is occurring within our respective organization. And speaking of all that is occurring, we can't do this without you. We have to have your financial support. And so we want you to seriously consider giving, and we've made it easy for you to do so. In fact, we're giving you 3 different options. You can simply pick up that phone in front of you right now and take your cell phone and point it right at the QR code available for you on the screen. And if you prefer, you could take that same cell phone and text the word PUSH to 41444. Text PUSH to 41444. And we have a lot of content coming up for you today. So whatever you do, don't touch that dial. Bishop Tavis Grant and I are going to join you in just a few moments and talk to you about some of the things that are occurring in our nation and how that impacts you and how that impacts children and students. And following that, you can expect to hear from Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson, who is going to bring you up-to-date information from a legal perspective. Again, don't touch that dial. The push is on. Keep hope alive.
I'm Terry Savage. If you've been in Chicago for a long time, you might have seen me on radio, on television, radio, read my columns, which run in the Tribune. I've devoted my life to financial literacy, and I'm very honored to have been asked to kind of organize this event today. So this is all about, we call this section of the program, Where's the Money? Latika, I'm going to start with you. With all these accolades, we know it worked. I mean, we now have proof right in this room that it worked. Why isn't it working more and better for minority and women-owned businesses to find funding? And I'm going to ask you all to speak right into the microphone. It's a cavernous room.
Yes, good morning, everyone. So the WBDC played a very unusual role last year, which I'm going to lead into the answer to this question that Terry asked. Over the last 2 years, since COVID started, we have been working with state, city, and county governments in the state of Illinois to review application for grant fundings, and we're responsible for dispersing close to, I would say, $250 million directly into the hands of small business owners across the state. So about 9,000 small businesses received that funding. And this is what we've done over the past 2 years. So we are not a data-driven organization, but we like to keep ourselves what I call data-informed. So once the entire review process kind of wrapped up, we looked at what happened. You know, in the past 2 years, we've done so much work. Why did we see this index shifting towards certain types of businesses receiving more grant funding versus the businesses that didn't? So we really looked at every single application, who received, which zip code they received money in, which county received more money. And what it informed us was that there were 2 issues here. One was awareness. That was a distinct pillar. There was an entire segment of population that wasn't aware that these programs were being launched. You had, ads on NPR, you had ads in the newspapers, but despite that, we needed more grassroots organizations to be involved in actually spreading the word about these programs to the communities. We needed churches involved. So we really found out that awareness was a big issue. The second issue was preparedness. There were a lot of businesses, they applied, but they weren't ready to absorb this capital. So I think the last 2 years were a little unusual. This was the first time in American history where there was a lot of capital available through federal grant programs, through PPP, through the economic injury disaster loan programs. So I think access to capital wasn't an issue. It was who was able to access this capital and actually absorb it. And preparedness played a big role in that problem, and we really, really worked hard to hold small business hands and really help them with what we call the foundational pillars of what makes a compliant business. So is your business license in place? Are your taxes filed? So really these very basic fundamental things that small businesses needed help with, we stepped in and provided that help. So my mantra has always been right capital, right time from the right source. Over the past 2 years, if you could get access to grant money, we weren't actually advocating for debt because, grant money in the end of the day is almost like equity and there were no strings attached to it other than the use of funds. So we really, really advocated for all small businesses that we work with to reach out and access grant funding. Now, COVID money is slowly dying out and traditional debt is going to play a very important role in the recovery process. So in my mind, right now, small businesses really need to focus on building relationships with their business bankers. They need to start thinking about their cash flow. Banks have tightened their credit curves. It's becoming harder to borrow money. Inflation is playing a really big role in it. We have this trifecta of COVID, labor shortage, and inflationary pressures, and small businesses are really suffering. And to overcome that, please take help of organizations like ours that provide no-cost, free counseling to any business that comes to us, and we will hold your hand and get you ready to access debt funding. And for me, the biggest thing is awareness. You have to be aware of what is available out there for you to access. And we have so many different financial institutions offering programs for small businesses at lower interest rates. You have government-funded CDFIs and minority depository institutions, the MDIs, that also offer low-cost interest rate loans. So be aware of what's available.
Well, you're aware. Well, you're aware.
Yes.
You're aware, and that's the advantage. Now, I didn't plan the seating exactly perfectly, but you just tossed it to Robbie Shapira, who is the banker that knows those programs, and Wells Fargo has a commitment to diverse-owned businesses. So, Robbie, great. Now we've got the Women's Business Development Center and other organizations making people aware and holding their hands, telling them what they need. I'm going to come back to you later and ask you your top 3 tips or the 3 things that you know that small businesses need first before they go to the bankers. But you're the banker. CRA, almost 50 years old. Why are we still discussing the inability to access? How do you get to be friends with a banker if you live 12 blocks west?
Yeah, thanks, Terry. And I loved everything you said. Thank you so much for the work you've done during COVID and as hopefully we're emerging. I think the first is the comfort level with banking, especially in diverse communities, is still really low. Because the reality of if you are a diverse business owner, a Black African-American business owner, a woman business owner, then you have a history of open systemic discrimination that has taught you generation after generation that a bank may not be the most welcome place for you. And we can see that literally, as we were talking earlier, I was talking about HR 5050. This is a law that was passed in 1989 that made it illegal for states to require women business owners to have a male cosigner. That was passed in 1989, which means prior to 1989, there were states with legislation that said a woman business owner had to have a male cosigner, often from their family, to apply for lending. So the reality is, Terry, is even though 50 years of CRA is the generational impact of that, of legislation like that and bias is still being felt by diverse businesses today. And so I'm gonna hopefully not steal too much of your thunder, but the first thing that I always recommend to business owners is going into a bank, and Lodoka, you said this, forming a relationship with a banker who can advocate for you is so important, because banks are storage houses of information. So the deposit history, your payment history, if you process credit and debit cards, that history makes you more lendable and allows the bank to offset potential risk and create a more comprehensive credit profile. So it is true that the bank you should apply at first is the bank that knows you the best, because that financial institution is going to be able to have a more comprehensive view of you, your history, your business. And a banker that advocates effectively, Terry, is so important because they're the ones that submit the application that goes to the underwriter for review, that goes to the processor.
Let me push you on this. I don't know where Wells Fargo's branches are in Chicago, but if you are starting a business in your own community, where most people start their own businesses, bankers have been replaced by ATMs. Yeah. I guess there are tellers, but a lot of people don't know how they can tell, quote, a banker in their neighborhood local branch office. So this sounds really great at the corporate level. Form a relationship with your banker. Heck, I even married one once, but savage truth. But that's another story. But the point is, if you live in the neighborhood and that's where maybe you're no longer cashing your checks, you're smart. You're not going to the currency exchange and paying $1 zillion to cash your check or something like that. There's a bank. You got to the point where you would open up an account, you would have a debit card, you'd take Square or something else, and so you have a banking relationship. How do you find the banker in there? And what if there isn't a banker in your local office, is what long-winded way of what I was going to ask. How do you start a relationship?
I would say two things. One is the bank itself. You're building a relationship. Your information is powerful towards that lending decision. Okay. So even if your banker has turned over, which, how many people are feeling a hiring crisis right now? In the financial industry, we certainly are. And so the reality of having, I started as a banker in 1998. And I helped cultivate relationships with clients at the same branch for 5 years, but even the reality of that, to your point, Terry, has changed. So I would say two things. The first is the financial institution that has your information, that alone is valuable. The second is when you are sitting with a banker, even if it's your first time meeting them, you can tell the difference of someone who's really listening and is engaging with you and believes in what you're saying. I love the chance to meet business owners, and I believe business owners can tell that, and that level of trust that I can build in the moment because they know I'm listening and therefore going to advocate for them. So even if it's your first time meeting that banker, helping them to believe in you, your business, be your advocate, or to be honest, find another banker. Find another branch of that institution, if they're the ones with all your information, or to be honest, take a chance on a new institution, build your relationship there, because having that kind of service, having a banker that knows the program, that would fit your needs, the product that fits your needs, that listens and advocates for you, that calls you back when they say they will, that's really important in this industry.
That's a key takeaway, and they're supposed to do that. So if the branch out here, but the main branch is downtown, you just walk in and say, I've been banking with you on 63rd and something or other for a long time. I want to grow my business. Where do you walk into First Chicago, that dates me, Chase, downtown, or whatever, the big branches? Yep. You just walk in and say, I'm a client, I'd like to speak to a banker?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was in branch banking for most of my career, and the reality is the larger, busier branches staff the more specialized bankers. And if you have your relationship with that institution, maybe that's just where you go when you need the real serious stuff, like I want to talk about a lending relationship, or I need to talk through my cash flow as a business owner. Absolutely, Terry.
All right, that's a great takeaway. So Lodica's first takeaway was you need to know what's out there. And you probably need help because where would you find it? I don't think you can Google it exactly, and you need to know how to present it. Your takeaway as the banker is, yes, speak up, stand up, and demand attention, not from the teller behind the counter who takes your change or whatever, but from a banker who's involved in the lending side. All right, now I want to take this to another level, Maurice Coleman. You've been involved in so many aspects of this, but could I just start out with the economy? Because Lodica made a very good point. despite the horrendous nature of the last couple of years, there was money around. Now, that doesn't mean everybody has money. I'm not trying to say that. But there was money in the system. And it came from all of these programs and more. Now we're starting with the Federal Reserve, who has announced publicly they're raising interest rates and they're sucking the money out of the system that they helped put into it. And so it doesn't take an economic genius to think things are going to tighten up. How do you think, Maurice, that's going to impact small businesses and the availability of money for them to grow?
Terry, thank you for that question. Let me take care of a couple of just quick housekeeping pieces first. First of all, can you give yourselves and Rainbow Push, I saw John Mitchell, I see Dr. Uri in the back, Dr. Brian, Terry Savage, thank you so much. Can you give yourselves a round of applause for being here? We just came out of a global pandemic, and we are now back together again. And this ties directly to Terry's point. We banter. Terry's a legend in this space because she has taken the skills of Wall Street and has translated them to improve our communities and our streets. And for that, you should definitely be recognized. Thank you, Terry. So she asked me to just give you some straight talk. So let me begin with some fundamentals as I walk us back to where we were over the past 18 months. You know, I have a 16-year-old and I have a 13-year-old. And my children like to say to me and their friends, they say, you know, Mr. Coleman, Mr. C, we love you because you always keep it 100. And as Terry said that she married a banker, she probably retired him because he was an expired asset. But I tell my kids, and their friends, I said, don't keep it 100 with me. I need you to keep it a minimum of 700 plus, because that's your credit score. I cannot do anything with you keeping it 100. Let me say that again. I need you to keep it a minimum of 700 plus, because your credit score is your adult report card. You see, over the past 18 months, we've learned at least 3 things. One, we learned that the fundamentals of financing still matter. When you walk into a bank, they're going to look at you. This is what Robbie mentioned, your character, the 5 C's of credit. They don't go away. They're going to look at your character. They're going to want to understand your capacity, your debt-to-income ratio. They're going to want to understand your collateral, your cash flow, and your credit history. Who do you owe? How much do you owe? And how good have you been at paying them back? Understand your credit score, understand your financial profile before you step into a financial institution. Because the last 3 years taught us a few things. 2 years taught us a few things. One, we now need to be balanced. Robbie talked about banking. Here's banking right here, people. This is banking. You could do all the things you need to do digitally right now. So you need to be approaching everything that you do in a hybrid fashion. It's not just about brick and mortar anymore. I deposit my checks, conduct transactions right here from my phone. This is the new world that we live in. We all saw it. How many people in here like me didn't know what Zoom was 2 years ago? Now you use it every single day. Zoom, WebEx, right? We use these tools now. Right? Microsoft Teams, we all have to get used to working in this hybrid remote environment. The second thing it taught us was flexibility. We have to know who we are, and we have to know what our product is and what our clients want. So it's not enough for me to be able to just sit back in my bank, in my Ivy Tower. I have to go and meet you where you are. And I have to give you the content digitally to make sure that you can access it wherever you want it, whenever you want it. That's the new world we live in. That's banking today. So in this rising interest rate environment, you have to be able to check on your phone to see how much that mortgage is going to cost you today. You have to have access to all of your accounts right here via your phone. That's the new environment that we live in. And finally, last but not least, to Terry's point, you have to build a reserve. Too many of our companies did not have a reserve. So unfortunately, when they got hit hard. Because here's the other jewel I want you to walk away with. If you're not networking, you're not working. It's not just what you know, it's not just who you know, but it's who knows you. And what do they know you for? Establish a relationship with your banker before you need them. That way, when you do need them, they understand who you are. I've been on Wall Street for over 20 years. I have never had a spreadsheet pay me back. People pay you back. That's why the first C of credit is character.
Lodica, give me quick, there are 3 tips for small businesses who don't even know what they don't know.
So to access debt, I think for me, don't only always just think about traditional bank debt. There are other types of debt available as well. So you have micro-lending platforms like Kiva, where if you just have small requirements for your business, it's 0% interest, it's 3-year term loans. I think that's a really good option for very small community-based businesses.
Say the name again, it's Kiva.
Kiva, K-I-V-A. It's a crowdfunding platform, and the WBDC is the only Kiva hub for the greater Chicago and Collier counties area. And we've had incredible success with it. Just the thirst for debt capital at really low interest rates for people having really poor credit scores is very high. So a lot of the people that we help get money through Kiva have 500, 600 credit scores. They are immigrants in the country, or they are, a really poor, located in very, what I would call low-income communities, where they're trying to build a business and really uplift the community with them by providing job opportunities. So Kiva has been incredibly successful. So again, awareness, be aware that a program like that exists and we can help you get that money. The other thing, relationship banking, is something I'm going to piggyback off, because PPP loans kind of really hammered it into every single small business owner in America how important relationship banking was. Yes, anyone could apply online, but if you did have an existing relationship with a banker, how much easier was it to actually access this really vast pool of money? And the third thing, and this is actually one of my pet peeves with a lot of financial institutions, is the fact that credit scores are the gatekeeper. I wish they were a little bit more flexible on that, because I think inherently it is a very racist metric, because people who are poor, when the economy turns, it tends to directly impact their credit scores. So I feel that we really need to be aware of that, and really need to push for legislation that will, banks are very slow moving, I completely understand that, but really need to have them think about alternative ways of reviewing creditworthiness of an individual. Like, right now, COVID has thrown out what bankers would traditionally look at, which is past 6 to 12 months of historical revenues being an accurate predictor of future growth. That's out of the window right now. So this is such a great time to reevaluate how they should be thinking about creditworthiness of small businesses. And I think the last thing is know your numbers. If there is one thing I could have small business owners take away from this, is know your numbers. Really understand what your numbers are telling you for your business, because if you don't have a handle on them, then you're not using them to make good decisions for your business, and someone else will make the decision for you. So really,
and you forgot one important website, Women's Business Development Center, WBDC, Women's Business Development Center.org, where you can access all of this information. Here in Chicago and satellite offices, lots of places. All right, Robbie, give me 3 tips for small businesses from the bank. This is from the banker's point of view.
Yeah. Thank you. The first is, I'm going to go back to what Maurice and I were sharing earlier, which is, the keys, and what you just reemphasized it, the keys of getting approved. The first is applying. And so the reality is that if you are unsure, if you're uncomfortable, just know that that banker is also unsure and uncomfortable, because they want to take care of you. The good bankers do. Remember, we talked about pick a great banker that listens, that follows up with you. If not, find another banker, because you deserve that as a business owner. The second component of borrowing when you don't need it. If we move into a recession, please don't apply 3, 6, 9, 12 months from now when business has slowed down. Apply now when your business is doing well. And for the last one, I'm going to just tell a very quick story, but at Wells Fargo, we did almost $14 billion in PPP loans in the last 2 years. And for that, in 2020, we received $420 million from the SBA. And we donated every dollar of that $420 million because we knew that PPP only went to a small percentage of business owners and that diverse and women-owned businesses got less than non-diverse and male-owned businesses. And all of those dollars, the majority went to what Lodika talked about earlier, which are CDFIs. And Terry, you talked about secured card as a way to build credit on the personal side. If you've never heard of a CDFI, they're a community development financial institution. And financial institutions like Bank of America and Wells Fargo, we pour millions of dollars into them to incubate small businesses. And one of the things I'm really proud of at Wells Fargo is we partnered with a nonprofit called the Community Reinvestment Fund. They have a platform called Connect to Capital. It's the number 2 instead of the word 2. So if you Google Connect to Capital, the number 2, what you'll find is that you...
.com or org?
.com. Yep.
.com.
Then what you'll find is that you can build a profile to be matched to a CDFI. And I know some of you watching may not be in the Illinois area, so if you're not, like I'm not, I'm from Seattle, then it'll connect you to a CDFI in your local community. And the whole point of these CDFIs is to help you be credit ready for a bank, but to get you credit today, if at all possible. And to Lodika's point, they don't use a traditional underwriting model. They use a lending committee. They look at alternative data. They can use diverse types of collateral. And so the world of lending can open up to business owners, and many of them very specifically serve diverse and women-owned businesses. So if you've never heard of a CDFI, if you don't know where to go to Connect to Capital. We're a very proud partner of theirs as we refer our customers to get CDFI support and be incubated for that next stage of credit. And it's just been a pleasure.
What a great tip. CFI, it stands for...
CDFI.
CDFI stands
Community
for...
Development Financial Institution.
Okay, and they're around the country?
All around the country. There's more than 300 of them.
And you can find the one near you, connect, the
to
number 2, capital.com.
Yep.
CDFI. Now, Maurice.
Or you can just go to Bank of America's website. It's all there.
Bank of America's website. We got to thank the bankers here.
We're the largest investor in CDFIs in the country. So we have over a $2 billion portfolio of CDFIs.
I sense a column coming. I have to talk to you afterwards. This is something new to me. Okay, I learned a lot today, too.
So you heard Terry mention my bio. She mentioned True Fund. True Fund is a national CDFI that I was the chairman of for 15 years. So when Katrina happened, we were the entity that launched into New Orleans and provided capital and loans to rebuild the 9th Ward in St. Bernard Parish. When Harvey hit in Houston, we were the entity that went to Houston and provided the capital to rebuild the city. When Maria hit in Puerto Rico, we were the institution that went there to provide the capital to support the small businesses. So I've been running CDFIs my whole career. The largest empowerment zone in the country is called the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone in Harlem. I ran that for 15 years. We provide the capital to redevelop the Harlem that you see today, as well as working with LIST. Terry mentioned it earlier, the Local Initiative Support Council. I was the chairman there for 15 years in New York, the largest affiliate of LIST. LIST is a national player. So all of these are CDFIs. So to Robbie's point, we have partners. We don't just work with B of A, we work with Wells, we work with Goldman, we work with Chase. We have partners because banks in that space, they understand how to be co-opetitive. Yes, we're competitive. We're supposed to be, because we deliver the capital that allows you to get the best product and services by being competitive. But we're cooperative when we need to be, because that's how we work together and we win. And the CDFI space is an opportunity for us to be co-opetitive. In that same spirit, we decided, because again, let's not forget where we were. The past 2 years have been tough. In February of 2020, we saw the death of Ahmaud Arbery. In March of 2020, we saw the death of Breonna Taylor. In May of 2020, we saw the death of George Floyd. 9.5 minutes We saw the death of all of these African Americans. So because of that, many institutions, they have launched initiatives to support the work that needs to be done to close the racial equity gap. We have a $1.25 billion commitment, and our CEO has said that's the floor, not the ceiling, because we are committed to doing our part to try to close this gap. So that $1.25 billion commitment has led to over $50 million being invested in minority depository institutions, like Harvard Bank, like One United, and making sure we improve their balance sheet. And over $350 million going to women and minority private equity funds around the country. And I have all those names and all those partners to give you access to another $100+ million going to invest in not-for-profits.
Wait a minute. What's your phone number, Maurice? At Bank of America. What's your email? Maurice at Bank of America. I need money.
I'm easy to find. I'm really easy to find.
Okay.
My point here is that all of us have made a similar commitment. There are a lot of different programs out there. This is your moment. Don't let your moment not become a movement. Lean in right now, ask us. This is about getting you access to capital. We are doing it with partners. We're doing it directly. It's not perfect. We got more work to do, but we all must be in this fight together.
Thank you all so much. Lodica at Women's Business Development Center, WBDC.org, Robbie Shapiro, who heads up diverse lending at Wells Fargo, and Maurice at Bank of America. You have inspired us all, and we're going to have a second session that will even be more exciting. But first, a round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you.
This is Bishop Tavis Grant, the National Field Director for the Rainbow Push Coalition. I want to thank you for joining our International Saturday Morning Forum. Right here from Dr. King's workshop here in Chicago. As we progress through this year, we have so much at hand as it relates to voter suppression, as it relates to criminal justice reform, and really pursuing economic equity in all of the sectors where we have business entrepreneurs and innovators. Your support of what we're doing from day to day, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, we are on the field in one place or another in pursuit of equal protection under the law. The work of Jesse Lewis Jackson spans well over 50 years. And as you've seen week after week after week, we continue to provide for you the best information, analysis, and engagement to ensure that you are empowered, engaged, and informed. Go to rainbowpush.org and join us today, the fastest growing social justice army in the entire world, as we are keeping hope alive.
We're excited to get more people involved in Rainbow Push, supporting the programs of Push for Excellence and the Citizenship Education Fund. If you're interested in impacting public policies, if you believe in the scholarships that we give to thousands of students each and every year, you can become a policymaker by becoming a member of Rainbow Push right now. For an annual membership of $35, or if you're a student or senior, $15, you can help us make a difference in the lives of millions. How do you become a member? Visit our website at rainbowpush.org and press join. Or maybe you'd like to support us. You can text the word PUSH, that's PUSH, to 41444 on your cell phone, and you can give any amount you feel comfortable giving. You can also call us at 773-256-2775, or go to rainbowpush.org and push donate. Wherever you are, you can support us as we keep pushing for you.
This is Bishop Tavis Grant, the National Field Director, along with Dr. Sonia Whitaker. Dr. Whitaker here recently in Chicago, we had the horrendous and heinous act of violence hit our region. 7 people lost their lives. Many are injured physically and psychologically. There's something about this that just shifts the landscape up under you and affects our whole canvas of understanding safe spaces. From an educator standpoint, how do you see this impacting? Because, you know, a tremendous amount of young people, and these mass shootings have been nearly 300 of them just this year alone.
Right.
And they disproportionately impact communities of color as well. What would be the analytics that you would put out as it relates to the impact on young people?
Well, I would say, I just want to start out by pointing out the fact that I'm not sure how many people saw this, but one of the news broadcasters the day later stood in front of a tricycle, a pink tricycle, where one of the youngest children that attended that parade fled from. And that really resonated with me, the magnitude of the impact of this on not just adults. I believe they said that the shooter impacted or interacted with children from the age of 8 all the way to adults to the age of 80 with no thought to that. And so I'm thinking not just about the teenagers that I saw run who were walking in the parade, but I'm thinking about the little girl that was on the tricycle and the fact that even as early as preschool now, they have been impacted negatively related to violence. And you know, Bishop, we're in summer, right? Summer programs, summer schools, but students are actually due back at school in the next 4 to 5 weeks, depending upon what district that they're actually registered in. So I can't help to think about what we have to prepare to do as educators once again to address the social and emotional impact of such a tragic event, not just on the children that participated that day or the children that were actually at the parade, but those that have to watch it. You mentioned a moment ago about feeling safe. As an educator, I'm thinking about how important it will be for myself and my teachers to create an environment once again where they can actually feel safe, not just at a parade, but coming to school.
You know, the impact of this, when people see this kind of violence in communities of color, it's always akin to poverty, it's always akin to the economics or the social structure or lack thereof. Highland Park is a very middle to upper class community. It has several ethnicities in that community. I think we're learning from this that, like the pandemic, violence has no borders. Right. This young person went as far as trying to disguise himself as a woman, and had it not been for the serialization of the weapon, police officers would have never, law enforcement would have never been able to track him down. And one of the things that Reverend Jackson has been working on is fighting for serializing ammunition to ensure that the tracking process, so many red flags were ignored, so many internal home warnings. His own uncle had no idea he had a gun and had no idea he had these thoughts of violence. From an educator standpoint, how do we become more proactive rather than reactive?
You know, it's interesting that you asked that question, because one of the things that was also brought to my attention is that this young adult was actually a high school dropout. And I try, because I'm a practitioner, not just a researcher, to be careful to make sure that schools aren't the blame, and I don't think schools should be the blame for heinous acts like this. But I do think that there are things that we can do proactively as educators to track not just our students' performance, but what happens in middle school and what happens in high school, and how do we actually support. And you don't hear a lot of people talk about this, Bishop, but how do we as educators build a system of support around the young adults who actually don't graduate? We know who those folks are, because they're not across the stage. We're not issuing graduation diplomas to them. And so I think that again, I'm glad you asked me that question. And so I think that I want to encourage and be encouraged by a need and a mission centered around making sure we know where those young adults are and that they actually do have support.
Well, you know,
even beyond high school.
The bookend, I think that's an excellent point. The bookend of this violence with Jalen Walker in Akron, Ohio, a traffic stop that led to his death. You know, across the country, there are 400 cases of police-involved shootings, well over $200 million in civil litigation, and it appears this outside aggression, this outsized anger in terms of driving while black, jogging while black, standing while black, being black while black.
Right, right.
If you meet the criteria of being a young black male and you get pulled over, there's this fishing exposition that the pretext of trying to find something that is even more egregious in terms of equal protection under the law.
Right.
When you look at a case like that, 100 rounds used, he was shot 60 times. We saw this in New York with a man who had a wallet, who they said had a weapon. Jalen had no weapon. Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, Laquan McDowell here in Chicago. As an educator, how do we then create this synergy between the civil rights community and the community at large to begin a new way of educating from a cultural standpoint, that we not live in fear and be hostages of these acts, but really gain some sense of independence and esteem that we too deserve a place in this democracy.
I think that you're going to appreciate my response to this, and that is centered around making sure that students feel empowered. I think we have to do more in education with the curricular experiences that we provide or that we expose students to. You know, there's a national debate about what should and should not be taught in schools. Where I want to go with this is, when I was in school, we talked about current events. For example, what you just described and what just occurred in Highland, in Illinois. The reality is that students have the capacity, they have the intellectual capacity to recommend solutions to those things that are occurring that are negatively impacting their life and negatively impacting society. And so when I suggest that we need to look at and or revamp curriculum, what I'm suggesting is that as educators, we have to build more opportunities for those students to not just be impacted, to not just address the social and emotional needs that they have, but to position and to leverage them intellectually so that they can make for the types of recommendations that they believe will help solve those problems. You know, we've just come out of primary campaign elections. And the reality is that children were involved, but in my humble estimation, not enough. How often are we asking and or expecting the political candidates to go to the young adults, to report to the young children who have been or can be negatively impacted by incidences as we just described? I would think that that is something that we could and should be doing programmatically, but that does require a structural change. And it does require we practice what I call the policy of intentionality as it relates to addressing the topic that we are referring to.
Policy of intentionality.
Policy of intentionality.
This is Rainbow Push International Saturday Morning Forum. As you have heard us just discuss, these are extraordinarily disturbing times. Mass shootings, violence, and mayhem. The killing of Jalen Walker is at the height. 8 police officers, 100 rounds, maiming his body 60 times, and not an appropriate response by policymakers and or legislators as to the inappropriate nature of these kinds of acts. You can do something about it. Dr. Sonia Whitaker has articulated is a means by which we become empowered with information and education that affords us to execute both legislatively and public policy-wise a new way of self-determination. We too matter, and this too is our democracy. It's been the quest and the work of Jesse Lewis Jackson for over 50 years to fight, defend, and protect the gains of civil rights and to ensure that above all else, we keep hope alive.
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday summer camp this summer starting July the 7th. So if you have children between the ages of 5 and 15 years old and you want them to stay involved and to stay mentally connected with the rigor that academically they're going to be faced with this coming academic year, you want them here at the national headquarters of the Rainbow Push Coalition. We're going to be here from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. Thursday, Friday, and on Saturday from 10 to 4. So if you want more information about that, please visit our website at www.therainbowpushcoalition.org, and you can sign your children up from there. Push Excel's goal is to inspire students to strive for excellence in education in spite of personal, family, and community challenges that they might experience. How do we do this? By advocating for educational policies that guarantee equal funding for all students without regard to race or economic standing. By engaging parents, students, and teachers in pursuing high-quality education and striving for educational excellence at every level. And by forging partnerships with community-based and public sector stakeholders in education. Now, Push Excel is a national model program with the purpose of connecting principals, parents, popular personalities, and students in a bond and to support students at every level on the educational ladder. Now, we want you to become a member of the Rainbow Push Coalition and Push Excel. Your annual membership can help us to change policies that impact students, colleges, and universities all around the country. So step up and sign up today. Membership is only $35, and if you're a student or a senior, $15. Just go to our website, rainbowpush.org, and push join to become a member or push donate to support the Push Excel program. You can also text the word Push Excel, that's PUSHEXCEL, to 41444 on your cell phone, and you can give us any amount that you feel comfortable giving or call us at 773-256-2775. Wherever you are, you can support us as we keep pushing for you. And remember to keep hope alive.
Well, this 4th of July weekend, which many Americans celebrate the 4th of July as part of the founding of America. For African Americans, we don't celebrate, we remember, because at the time of the 4th of July celebration, the Declaration of Independence, upon which the 4th of July is really designed to celebrate, we were still slaves at that time. And so we were not considered 100% as citizens of the United States of America, 3/5 of a person for that matter, at that moment. But as we look at what has happened in America, on all around America, really, on the 4th of July this year, there were a number of mass shootings. We know about the one in Highland Park in the middle of a parade. We don't remember, however, about the one in Gary, Indiana, another mass shooting where the shooter has yet to be arrested and held for trial. We had shootings in other cities all around the country on the 4th of July. But in addition to the mass shootings where assault weapons were used, we also have a number of violent shootings and murders and injuries to innocent bystanders in Chicago specifically. Young people in the community, young people downtown, many were shot, and several deaths occurred. You have it in every major city in this country. What does this say to us? We have a proliferation of guns on our streets. We have an unusual number of individual citizens who are not in the military, who are not engaged in an international crisis of warfare, of a declared war, who have declared war on ordinary citizens in our country and have access to military weapons and ammunition. There's no justification for assault weapons to be in the hands of individuals, nor is it, it should not be a situation where people have access to these assault weapons, assault rifles, and magazines so that they can add more firepower in a shorter period of time. And so what must we do about that? Certainly we must press upon our U.S. senators, our United States congressperson to ban the use of the sale and use of assault weapons and the magazine, the clips that fuel them from use by any citizen in this nation. And that's one public policy. The other thing is we must begin to look at the easy access to guns. There's so many guns on the street. Every underage child can have access to a gun, and yet they can't vote until they're 18. Yet they can get guns. They can buy them on the internet. They're buying ghost guns. They're manufacturing guns and are used to injure and cause great bodily harm to other young people. And so we must move aggressively state by state, as well as pushing our federal legislators to pass gun legislation, taking the guns out of the hands of individuals. Some people say, well, some of them have mental issues. They have mental issues, but they also have weapons available to them. And oftentimes, if you have conflict and people don't know how to resolve conflict in a nonviolent way, they resort to whatever weaponry that is easily available to them. And so now guns have become the weapon of choice to resolve disputes over gym shoes, disputes over any particular situation on the street. And so we're calling on every state and federal elected official to pass state by state, and then at the federal government must pass legislation to remove guns from the hands of our citizenry. Why is this important? Because when we look at November, we will elect every state senator and every member of the state General Assembly all across the country in 50 states. If people want to push for states' rights, we want states to control the access to guns from all of our communities, whether it's Highland Park, the city of Chicago, Pittsburgh, New York. Guns must be removed from easy access by ordinary people. Secondly, want to have a ban on assault weapons. You do not hunt with an assault weapon. Therefore, there's no need for them to be sold anywhere. We must close down gun shops like Chuck's Gun Shop in Cook County that sells 50% of the guns that are used in incidents in the Chicagoland area. We must punish those that traffic guns, and we must now begin to, as Reverend Jackson said, pass the legislation that registers the bullets. We can trace the bullets back to the end user. We must punish parents whose children take guns from the home and use them. The parents then should be held liable for the acts of their minor children. We must begin to pass legislation that begins to protect the ordinary citizens. And so we're asking for all of the bar associations to join us and work with us at PUSH. All of our state and federal legislators want to work with you to draft legislation this year that will pass the House and the Senate and reach the president's desk. We must protect our neighborhoods, our communities with the legislation that is necessary to keep guns out of the hands of individuals. The other thing is, as we look at the disparity, we have a situation in Akron, Ohio, where you see the most egregious display of excessive use of force by a police officer. We need to adjust our public policy, which says that any police officer that would engage in the behavior that we witnessed on the video in Akron for a mere traffic stop, you have a citizen with no prior background shot at 90 times, hit 60 of those 90 times. That's unconscionable. It is unreasonable. There's no justification for that kind of action. There's no way that 8 police officers could have been in fear of life or limb enough to not only try to tase, but then to shoot at one individual unarmed, alone, 90 times, hit him 60 times, causing his untimely death. You look at how that young man, for a mere traffic stop, was treated, and compare that to a young man in Highland Park, an affluent majority white neighborhood, who shot up at a parade, how the police moderated their behavior. No shots were fired at him, even after they discovered him, and how they protected him in the same manner that they protected Kyle Rittenhouse. We must have one set of rules for how police officers should behave. It should not matter about the color of skin of the victim. It should treat everyone fairly without regard to race, class, or gender, or sexual preference. And so we're saying that police officers who use excessive force should be punished to the fullest extent of the law, and they should have civil penalties resulting in the removal of their future pension rights, as well as if they were any ordinary citizen, because when you use that kind of excessive force, there should no longer be a law that provides police officers from immunity from prosecution and from civil penalties. We thank you. We're going to be working on this for the next several months. If you want to be a part of this, join us, give us a call, send us a message, call us at 773-FREEDOM. We need your support, need your ideas. Wherever you are, give us a call. Thank you.
Be sure to join us on our Saturday morning forum on next Saturday. We will continue to bring great content to you. And be sure to like our Facebook page and share when you're watching live. And if you're watching us on YouTube, because that's what you prefer to do, be sure to subscribe to our page so you can continue to get up-to-date information about what is occurring in our organization. We need you. We don't just need your financial support, but we need your hands. We need your participation. So we're asking that you seriously consider joining Rainbow Push, and you can do so by going to our website at rainbowpush.org. Keep hope alive.
We are sanctuary. We are a sanctuary.
When I think of Rainbow Push, I think of two words: social justice.
Education advocacy.
Political empowerment.
Freedom and equality.
Corporate partnership.
Stop the violence. Save the children.
Don't get in. Shut it down. If we don't get in, shut it down.
Political change.
Inclusion, evolution. Progress, justice.
Jesse Jackson.
Keep hope. Keep hope alive. Alive. Keep hope. Keep hope alive. Alive.
We want to be bridges to end these cultural gaps.
We're going forward. By hope. Not backwards. By fear.